Hey folks, Leith here. I'm just going to delineate the landscape for us at the current time. This is a Melbourne chart. So today is the 19th of September 2020. So I'm choosing to do Melbourne because there's such a big focus on Melbourne, but obviously this relates to the whole world. And although this is a Melbourne chart, the configuration here is still the same. It's just going to have swung wherever you may be in the world. But first, let's look at the outer landscape so that we know what we're dealing with, and then I'll get back into this chart. So it's imperative that we understand that we are still dealing with the Pluto landscape, our most outer orb that is running everything that's happening right now in terms of the death, destruction, crisis, transformation, reinvention. So we see here that Pluto went into Capricorn in January 2008, which is when the global financial crisis began, which was the beginning of the end of a system that was no longer functioning. It had imploded upon itself. It was done. But how do you remove such a massive system like that from the landscape that everyone is intricately entwined in, and in a really negative way, in a debt slavery context? It takes a long time. And so we're still dealing with that. And here we are at 2020. So we're a good 12 years into our 13th year of dealing with this landscape, our most outer orb, that brings about irreconcilable change. And it's going to be there until 2024. So we can see here, January 21, 2024 is when it leaves being in Capricorn and moves into Aquarius, humanity. So it's been transforming the power structure this whole time since 2008. Pluto brings irreconcilable change, Pluto, to the power structure, Capricorn. So it's blowing it up and it's now in the throes of reinventing it. So we're actually really obviously highly progressed in this process, and you have to really broaden your landscape because we're sort of in emergency mode and everyone's thinking is very front of brain and in high survival mode. It's challenging to correlate as far back as 2008 and think, oh, well, what's all that got to do with it? Well, it's got everything to do with it, because we are having a overhaul of a financial system of government and of law, and I will continue to show you that as I continue through this delineation. I'm going to call this part 1 because I want to keep it at around 10 minutes, and if I choose to do another section then I will, but I'm just going to aim for about 10 minutes worth. So that's the biggest outer landscape, our outer orb. So it's important that we recognize Pluto has an orbit of 248 years. So when it makes movement, it is a really big deal. We also want to clarify that, of course, we came out of the end of the Mayan calendar in October 28, 2011. So this began, then the Mayan calendar ended, which marked the end of the 5,125 year cycle, which was the 5th cycle of the 25,625 year cycle. So it was the end of a civilization, but we don't want to freak out at that, even though it is big and involved. But with every end comes a new beginning. So this is the beginning of a new civilization. And whilst there has been, a lot of carnage and hurt and distress, that's just inevitably part of it. And I have my own awful experiences in terms of loss. So, I have huge empathy for the loss, but there is also a sense of inevitableness about such a massive change. I'll just stop for one moment and say, for those who have experienced suicide around them, one of the greatest healers that you can access easily on YouTube is to go to the teachings by Dolores Cannon, who spent her whole life doing hypnotherapy and building a massive story through multiple clients, the same story coming through multiple clients, where you will learn really clearly the death process, and it is not as traumatic as what our cultures lead us to believe. And also you do actually have easy access to your loved ones when they've passed into the other dimensions, if you choose to learn how to do that and have an energetic frequency that allows you to communicate quite easily. Okay, so I'm still in Melbourne now, so I just want to clarify the other elements of the outer landscape, which is to look at Neptune, which is in Pisces. So it rules Pisces. It's very happy in Pisces, and it's very mature here. It's at 19 degrees. It's only got 11 degrees to go. So it's been there for quite some time, and it rules, in one context, illusion. And of course, a lot of what we have been experiencing is illusion. You know, the whole of Hollywood is breaking down, if you know what's been going on in that world. Mass media, we know it spins a certain type of story. If you know what goes on in that world, a very specific narrative is what it spins. And we can see that there's this square happening here, which creates a lot of tension. So this is a new moon chart from just the other evening. I put us in at the new moon. So here is the new moon, and we can see it's got this square. So we could say, what is the narrative? What is the illusion that gets spun to us and creates our sense of identity? And how does this affect our sense of knowledge and our sense of education? And of course, the schooling system is under massive pressure because of what's happening when we put our kids into those institutions. There's issues of masks and separation, and of course vaccines, and the threat of if your child tests for COVID positive, then you're going to lose them for 14 days into isolation. So many matters that are involved in this. So as the new moon opened at 9 o'clock on the 17th, today's the 19th, we had Sun and Moon in Virgo being opposed by Neptune. So let's say, as part of astrology, we want to say, how do we wear these configurations that are presented to us? How do we wear them to our best ability, to suit us, to work in our favour, to not just be a brown paper bag blowing around in the wind of life, feeling like life just keeps happening to us? How do we actually start driving the astrology so that it serves us in a really positive way? So let's address that and say, well, let's have the illusion or the fantasy or the creation come under our power. Let's stop looking at the illusions that are fed to us by mass mainstream media and that type of thing, and news and so forth, because there's so much information out there, which is what this nodal axis is saying. Keep accessing information, just research wide, look around at the environment. There's so many incredible environments to find information in these days. And, back to that Pluto just quickly, how do we run this effectively so that we're making it work for us? Well, we recognize it's a very mature Pluto in Capricorn, and the old guard has been largely overthrown. This is for sure the death rattle of something that has lost its power, that is on its way out. It knows it's on its way out, and it's just going to burn the place down as it goes. And that's what it's been doing. And it's really good to recognize that. We know God has won. We know that already. This is long, well prophesized. So please take some peace in that. Now back to Melbourne, because it's such a hot spot. And if we look at the chart, we can see there's all these pressures and tensions. If we look at the new moon right at the ascendant here, the gateway to Melbourne, we see Mars in Aries, well progressed, but Mars can be the planet of war. Doesn't have to be. It's about our motivation, but that's what's going to get you motivated. In a cardinal fire sign, Aries, the hunter, also a great warrior. So the warrior is out standing at the front door here of Melbourne. Now, who's the warrior? We've got two sides of it, right? We've got this power structure stellium that's sitting up here that's been doing all sorts of things. And then we can say the power structure is being the warrior, the people are being the warrior, and there's all this tension moving along into this section. I'm at 10:18, so I'm actually just going to stop and do part 2. Thank you.